Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on a journey, really getting into the early life of someone who, well, still fascinates us. Alexander, son of Philip of Macedon. They
Absolutely.
have pulled together quite a range of sources, ancient historical accounts, but also some more um, creatively imagined portrayals.
Yeah, a real
And
mix.
the goal isn't just like a simple biography. We want to really dig into those early experiences, the relationships, the stuff that actually sculpted him.
It's remarkable, isn't it, how even these first glimpses, these little anecdotes, they seem to foreshadow so much of the man he'd become. It gives us a lens, sort of, to understand his later actions.
Okay, so let's really get into it. One of the first stories you often hear of this young kid, Alexander, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a snake hidden in his cloak.
Mm-hmm.
Not scared, but like intrigued. He even names it Taish.
Fortune. Luck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what strikes me is that early connection to something symbolic, something, well, a bit unusual. It hints at a mind that maybe saw deeper meanings in things,
Definitely. And you have to think about the context, right? Snakes in ancient Greece, Macedon, they carried a lot of symbolic weight.
like healing, destiny.
Healing, transformation, destiny, yeah, all of that. So for a young boy to not just be unafraid, but to actually engage with it, name it Taish. It suggests a pretty precocious awareness of these deeper currents.
It's fascinating. Then, almost in the same breath, you hear about him trying to see his mother, Olympias, late at night.
Right.
But he gets turned away. Strict palace rules,
Yeah.
can't go into the king's chambers after a certain hour.
Mm.
It's a small detail, but it paints this picture of a really rigid environment and maybe highlights this strong early pull towards his mother within that structure.
That juxtaposition is really telling, isn't it? You've got this kid drawn to powerful symbols like the snake, but he's also navigating this very formal, hierarchical world.
Yeah.
His trying again and again to reach his mother could be a deep emotional bond, sure, or maybe just seeking some comfort in what might have been a pretty austere palace life.
Which, naturally, brings us straight to Olympias and Philip.
The parents, always key.
And our sources really bring their contrasting personalities to life. It's hard not to see how that dynamic would have shaped Alexander so profoundly.
Oh, absolutely.
We hear about these intense exchanges. Olympias apparently didn't hold back, calling Philip common, stuff like that.
Yeah, loudly proclaiming her own supposedly superior lineage. Back to Achilles, you know?
Right, really hammering home the whole Greek blood thing in their son.
And Philip's response is just as revealing, isn't it? He might have brushed off her more, let's say, dramatic claims, but he was clearly invested in shaping Alexander his way. His focus on Greek schooling, on reason, civility. It was a direct counterpoint to Olympias's focus on ancestry and maybe a more spirited upbringing.
Less civilized, maybe.
Perhaps. It was a fundamental clash of values about how to raise their son.
Right. Philip wants this Greek education logic. Olympias is championing this inherent noble superiority idea. And Alexander's right smack in the middle.
A real tug of war.
Then the story shifts a bit to his friendships, his activities as a kid, and you get this great image of him with Ptolemy and this Molossian dog. A big, powerful animal, apparently almost died as a puppy. But it's Alexander who has this immediate connection.
And what's so interesting there is Alexander's empathy for this vulnerable creature, right?
Yeah.
But then at the same time, he's belting out the companion cavalry paean as they ride.
Yeah, that mix.
It highlights his love for animals, sure, but also his early immersion in that whole Macedonian military culture. That blend of compassion and, well, martial spirit is pretty characteristic even early on.
And then that question he asked Ptolemy,
Ow.
almost out of nowhere.
Yeah, that hits hard.
Is it true you're really my brother?
Oof, yeah. That just shines a light on the really complex, potentially volatile family situation, doesn't it?
Totally. Even at that age, there are whispers, maybe uncertainties about who's who, about status, hinting at rivalries,
Definitely potential rivalries within the royal household.
and that blood brother pact with Ptolemy. The whole clenched fist ritual. It really underlines how important those early bonds, that loyalty, must have felt to him.
Precisely. I mean, imagine that court-shifting allegiances, potential threats everywhere. These childhood friendships probably felt like a crucial anchor, you know, stability, trust.
They weren't just playmates.
No, they were the foundation for a lifetime network of support, really.
Okay, so then we get the arrival of the Persian envoys.
Ah, yes. A big moment.
And this is where young Alexander really steps onto the stage, doesn't he? He's just a boy, but he's dealing with these high-ranking guys from this massive empire Doesn't seem fazed by all the grandeur.
And it's not just passive, is it? He shows this remarkable self-possession, even a kind of subtle cultural assertiveness.
Not so.
Well, his polite but, firm correction about the prostration custom, the whole proskynesis.
Right, bowing down.
He says something like, well, here we don't fall down before the gods, so you needn't do it to my father. He's not used to it. He won't mind.
Wow. That's
No.
quite something for a kid.
It manages to be respectful of their ways, but also a clear statement of Macedonian practice. Speaks volumes about his early grasp of diplomacy, cultural differences.
It's such a clever move. He acknowledges their custom, but doesn't compromise his own.
Exact.
And you get that visual contrast, right? The sources mention the opulent Persian clothes versus the simpler Greek style. Really emphasizes the culture clash happening right there.
And this young boy is just soaking it all in.
Yes.
He's watching the nuances, learning how to navigate these complex social political landscapes way beyond his years, really.
We also hear about another incident that really drives home this tension between Macedonian and Persian ways, this time involving the royal women.
Yes. That one's revealing, too.
The Persian envoys, following their customs, ask for the royal women to be shown, unveiled. And Philip, being the pragmatist, tries to explain it away as just a cultural difference.
Trying to smooth things over.
But Alexander, his reaction is apparently immediate, intense anger he sees as this massive insult to his mother, his sisters.
This is a really key moment for understanding him, I think. It shows this fierce protectiveness of his family, especially his mother.
Yeah.
It highlights his strong sense of Macedonian honor, what he thinks is acceptable. And the contrast between Philip's diplomatic juggling and Alexander's passionate outburst, it shows a fundamental difference in how they approach dealing with other cultures.
Yeah, and the strong sense of heritage, it clearly wasn't just about his immediate family.
No, it runs deeper.
We see his connection to his ancestral roots, both through Philip's side, tracing back to Heracles,
The hero connection.
and then this more mystical, maybe divine link through Olympias. His visit to Heracles' shrine, noting how the young statue looked like Philip. That's telling.
It suggests he was aware, even early on, of his father's own heroic image, his aspirations.
But then you get the complete opposite influence with Olympias and the Dionysian rite.
Yes, a very different world.
The accounts mention animal sacrifice, like a goat. Alexander taking part in these ecstatic dances.
Yeah.
Even suggestions he had visions for the Great Mother.
It presents a totally different spiritual landscape. Philip represents a more, let's say, traditional, almost civic heroism. Olympias is steeped in these older, maybe ecstatic religious practices.
Two very different spiritual paths.
And these contrasting influences must have played a huge part in shaping how Alexander saw the world.
It feels like you need both to understand the later Alexander, right?
Yeah.
That mix of rational thought and maybe a belief in something, or the heroic drive mixed with a sense of destiny.
Absolutely. That blend is crucial.
And then we shift into his formal education. Leonidas arrives as his tutor. And surprisingly, it seems Olympias' own uncle was maybe more aligned with Greek educational ideas than Philip in some ways.
Well, Leonidas' first impression of Alexander is pretty blunt. He apparently found his Greek dreadful and saw him as undisciplined.
Really dreadful Greek.
That's the report. It suggests Olympias' priorities in his very early years might not have been focused on, traditional Greek literacy and rhetoric.
Interesting.
And that anecdote about Leonidas hitting Alexander for not bearing wounds silently, and then Olympias' reaction, obviously emotional, seeing the welts, it really highlights that tension, between a sort of Spartan ideal of toughness and a mother's protective instinct.
And then there's that almost darkly funny bit about young Alexander trying to use a wax doll to curse Leonidas.
Right, mimicking what Olympias herself apparently tried against Philip.
It's like he's learning these unorthodox methods of influence from day one.
It certainly gives you a peek into the kind of environment he grew up in, where the lines between politics, personal stuff, and maybe even a belief in magic could get pretty blurry.
Yeah.
It also suggests a certain early resourcefulness in Alexander, a willingness to try unconventional ways to get what he wanted, even if it was just getting back at a strict tutor.
We also see him pushing back against the more formal learning styles, right, with tutors like Epicrates and Camanthes. He's questioning why he needs to know the exact number of generals in 7 against Thebes. He seems more interested in the story, the meaning, not the grammar details.
That impatience with rote learning, wanting the bigger picture, It's classic for a mind driven by real curiosity, not just ticking boxes for school.
And the fact he was sketching on his wax tablet during lessons?
Yeah, it's just a restless intellect, looking for engagement beyond just copying exercises.
Then Lysimachus arrives, the one called Phoenix. And it seems like Alexander formed a really deep bond with him, especially through the Iliad.
That seems to have been a profoundly influential relationship, yes. He gets emotionally invested in Achilles and Patroclus, sees parallels, maybe, with the kind of bonds he saw or wanted in Macedonian life.
The Iliad just clicked with him.
On a deep level, clearly. Themes of heroic duty, intense loyalty, chasing glory, his reported desire to give Lysimachus a special gift, his understanding of taking the first of the death fates. It shows he was really internalizing those Homeric ideals early on, identifying with those legends.
We get a quick glimpse of Alexander at a royal banquet. And even there, the politics of Greek identity are buzzing. Philip's apparently very careful about his accent when talking to the Athenian delegation.
It just underscores that delicate tightrope Philip was always walking. Keeping influence in Macedon, but also dealing with the powerful, culturally dominant Greek city-states. Even how you spoke can matter politically.
And that volatile relationship with his mother keeps popping up.
Never far away.
We hear about Olympias having these intense outbursts at her household women, followed by what sounds like calculated emotional manipulation of Alexander, including those really cryptic comments about his true parentage.
Zagreus, be my witness, you are clean of that.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. It all feels designed to drive a wedge between him and Philip.
That constant undercurrent of marital fighting, Olympias deliberately trying to poison the father-son relationship, it must have created huge emotional instability for young Alexander.
Imagine hearing those veiled hints about your real father. How confusing and impactful that must have been.
Absolutely. On his whole sense of self.
We also get a peek into Olympias involved in what are described as, well, darker religious practices.
The Hecate ritual.
Yeah, sacrificing a black dog, casting a curse. And Alexander supposedly witnessed this secretly.
Adds another complex layer to his upbringing, doesn't it? Hints at the potential influence of more esoteric, maybe even kind of scary beliefs.
It paints a picture of a mother deeply involved in rituals outside the mainstream public worship. A more private, perhaps formidable spiritual life.
And witnessing that could have profoundly shaped how Alexander saw the supernatural, the power of hidden forces.
Then there's his reaction to Euripides' play, the Bacchae.
Yes, powerful stuff.
His intense emotional response to that scene. Agave with Pentheus's head.
Grisly.
Coupled with him supposedly recognizing his mother's bracelets on the masked actress playing Agave. It suggests this blurring of lines between the play and his own reality, linking the Dionysian frenzy on stage with his own mother's intensity.
It implies this deep fascination, maybe even a disturbed recognition of the raw power of that Dionysian ecstasy, and the potential for transformation, even violence within maternal figures, especially in that religious state.
The bracelet's detail is particularly chilling. Makes it so personal.
Very unsettling.
We start seeing his independent streak really emerging too. A clear desire for autonomy. The incident where he apparently disobeys Phoenix rides off towards Mount Olympus alone. It feels like a powerful symbol. A young guy wanting to test his limits, forge his own path.
It's that moment of youthful rebellion, isn't it? Pushing against the constraints, a tangible expression of wanting independence, maybe needing to connect with something wilder.
Then there's a tense exchange described with Philip about Thracian battle orders, presenting a captured trophy.
Right.
And Philip's sharp comment about Alexander's seemingly detached look, even hate might have been better. That really highlights a growing emotional distance between them, a disconnect.
Philip senses this lack of engagement from his son, maybe even indifference to his own achievements.
But then Alexander shows this intellectual curiosity about the Cimmerian wilderness, wants to learn more about Philip's campaigns. So there's still a desire for connection, for knowledge.
Yeah, but maybe more on Alexander's own terms now, focusing on what genuinely interested him.
We also see Alexander starting to develop his own personal style, actively resisting his mother's attempts to, dress him up for the Athenian envoys.
Political appearances?
His refusal to wear jewels, calling them barbarous. It marks a clear split in their views on aesthetics, maybe even politics.
He's starting to assert his own identity, form his own opinions on what's dignified. And it's not always matching up with his mother's more politically motivated image-making.
He's also described as watching the Athenian envoys really closely when they arrive.
Not just passively there.
No, noticing specific people, making his own judgments, and apparently recognizing one guy as looking like his ideal image of Hector from the Iliad.
Again, with the heroic ideals, it reinforces that strong connection, his tendency to see the world through that heroic lens.
He's not just observing, he's analyzing these people, comparing them to his own internal benchmarks for heroism, leadership.
It's a sign of a developing political mind, constantly trying to understand and categorize the world.
Then we get the accounts of Demosthenes watching Alexander. You can really feel the political tension in those descriptions.
Yeah, Demosthenes, the great Athenian orator.
Apparently, he initially underestimated the young prince, but then was clearly struck by his presence, his bearing.
Demosthenes was a shrewd political player himself. Seems he was caught off guard by Alexander's charisma, maybe a certain intensity even then.
That initial underestimation, then recognizing his potential, it says a lot about the impact Alexander could have, even as a youth.
Definitely.
And that reported encounter where Alexander confronts Demosthenes directly about Aeschines.
His political rival.
It shows incredible awareness of the political games being played, especially for someone so young.
It suggests Alexander wasn't shielded from the political realities. He was paying attention that the alliances, the rivalries, the potential for betrayal between the Macedonian court and Athens.
Then there's that pivotal moment. Demosthenes is trying to give a big speech.
Right.
A key opportunity. Only to be totally undermined by Aeschines, who spills some private info.
Ouch. Public humiliation.
And Alexander's reaction is fascinating. Apparently, he first looks down, then gives this slight smile, and just stares openly at Demosthenes, like he's measuring his reaction to the betrayal.
Whoa. That feels unexpectedly calculated.
Right. It's a really nuanced reaction. Suggests he totally understood the dynamics, maybe even subtly influencing the mood with just his expression.
And Demosthenes' complete embarrassment afterward just underscores the impact of that moment, Alexander's subtle influence.
Meanwhile, Philip's busy with his own big moves, securing Thermopylae, dealing with Athens, setting the wider political scene Alexander's growing up in.
Right, the backdrop is crucial.
Then we're introduced to Lemberos, a royal hostage, and the account suggests Alexander treated him with a kindness that stood out, different from the guard's indifference.
That small act of compassion towards someone vulnerable, it shows a genuine empathy, doesn't it? A recognition of shared humanity beyond status. It's a telling detail against the often ruthless backdrop of royalty.
We also hear about Alexander's musical talent, his intense dedication to playing the kithara.
The lyre-like instrument.
And Epicrates' observation, it feels almost prophetic. He is using it, as one day he will use himself, hinting at that self-mastery, that discipline he'd become known for.
There's a sense of him channeling that incredible will, that energy, into his music. Maybe honing his focus, his control.
But Epicrates reportedly felt corrupted by Alexander's unconventional approach and decided to leave.
Yeah, that emphasizes the boy's unique, maybe even slightly unsettling, intensity.
But this artistic expression gets shot down hard by Philip after a performance.
The clash.
Philip's words are brutal, dismissing it as a show fit for Corinthian whores and Persian eunuchs.
Ooh, harsh.
It just reveals this massive clash in what they thought was proper royal behavior, the role of public image.
Philip had a very specific traditional view of how a Macedonian prince should act. Alexander's passionate artistic display probably seemed effeminate, unbecoming of a future military leader. A deep rift in their values.
We meet Gyrus next. And through Alexander's interactions with him, we see an interest in the wider Macedonian tribal life beyond just the court. Hints of leadership.
Yeah, getting involved outside the immediate royal circle.
His willingness to be Gyrus's witness in Pella, right in the middle of a family feud. It suggests a connection to his Macedonian roots that went beyond royalty.
It shows an understanding, a respect for the different parts of the kingdom. And getting involved in Gyrus's personal stuff indicates an early move to build alliances, loyalty beyond the court.
Then comes that local skirmish with the Scopians. The accounts suggest Alexander showed bravery, but also emerging tactical thinking.
Right in the thick of
His concern for Gyrus's safety, his decisive actions in the raid, really points to his potential as a leader on the battlefield.
He's not just brave physically. He's thinking strategically under pressure, taking initiative, looking out for his guys. Key leadership stuff.
And then that really striking moment. Compassion and strategy rolled into one. Alexander stepping in to save the captured Scopian raider.
How did he do that?
By invoking his father's name, claiming the man as his battle prize. It spares the man's life, but also potentially gives Alexander leverage, or at least makes a powerful statement. The Scopians were apparently surprised.
It's a sophisticated power play, showing mercy which can win loyalty, but framing it within his own authority and his father's legacy. A glimpse into his complex, pragmatic leadership style developing.
We hear about the buzz around forming Alexander's personal guard, the companions,
The heteroi.
and how eager Macedonian fathers were to get their sons included.
Yeah.
That really speaks to Alexander's growing influence, right? The high hopes the nobility had for him.
Absolutely. He's becoming a figure people want to be associated with, want their sons to serve.
And then the boar hunt anecdote.
Yeah.
He faces this unexpectedly huge beast, sees it as a divine test, the boar the god had sent him.
Reinforces that image of him being special, favored by destiny, seeing deeper meaning in events.
We also get hints of the darker side of palace life, the aftermath of Pausanias' death.
Not the Pausanias who killed Philip later, another one.
Right, an earlier incident. Conflicting rumors about Philip's involvement, whispers of revenge plots by Attilos and Alexander's friends. It introduces this element of danger, shadowy dealings.
Highlights how volatile things were. The potential for violence, retribution, even at the top. The uncertainty around Philip creates this atmosphere of suspicion.
And a tense exchange is mentioned between Hephaestion and some others. Shows Hephaestion's fierce loyalty, defending Alexander against digs.
Always loyal, Hephaestion.
But Alexander reportedly knew about it, but chose not to notice it.
Interesting. A calculated move.
Seems like it. Suggests he's aware of the tensions, the loyalties, but strategically choosing when to engage. A developing political savvy, maybe maintaining distance when needed.
Makes sense.
Then, of course, the legend. Bucephalus.
Ah, the horse.
Alexander's incredible horsemanship. This unique bond with this apparently wild, fierce horse that no one else could handle.
Right.
He supposedly used Macedonian pet names, approached him calmly, understandingly, not with force.
Oxhead. Bucephalus.
Yeah. And he tames him. Such a powerful symbolic moment.
Definitely. Shows courage, skill, but also that intuitive understanding of animals, mastering the wild.
And Leonidas' reaction. Complaining about the expensive Arabian gum used for the libation afterward.
Always the austere one. Highlights the clash in values, again, Leonidas' practicality versus Alexander's perhaps more grand symbolic gesture.
The arrival of Aristotle as tutors. That's a game changer, right?
Huge. A major turning point in his intellectual development.
And the fact that Hephaestion was reportedly keen to join the lessons, it just underlines that deep connection between them. Intellectual partners as well as friends.
Aristotle's influence would be massive. Ethics, politics, philosophy. And Hephaestion being there constantly just shows the depth and breadth of their relationship. Shared intellectual journeys.
Amidst all this, we get brief reminders of the bigger picture. Philip campaigns, diplomacy, setting the context for Alexander's education and what he's being prepared for.
Right. Macedon's power is growing.
Aristotle's teaching at Mieza. It sounds so different from the earlier tutors. More about exploring ideas, ethics, politics, knowledge, based on demonstration.
A much more holistic, engaging education compared to someone like Timanthes with the rote learning. Fostering critical thinking, deep engagement with big questions. That foundation would be crucial later.
And even away at Mieza, he's still in touch with his mother. Letters, gifts, with Hephaestion apparently acting as the trusted go-between. Shows that maternal bond was still really strong.
Despite the distance, the other influences, that connection with Olympias remained key, and Hephaestion was central to maintaining it.
There's that powerful image described Alexander like a young eagle staring at the sun.
Symbolizing that intense focus, that soaring ambition.
Contrasted with Hephaestion's more grounded, maybe cautious concern for him, really captures their dynamic, doesn't it?
Perfectly. Alexander driven by this almost limitless ambition. Hephaestion just as devoted, but offering that pragmatic balance.
And they're still reading Homer together. The Iliad, working meticulously on the manuscript with Aristotle.
Shows how deep that influence went. Not just reading stories, but immersing themselves in heroism, sacrifice, leadership complexities, shaping Alexander's whole framework.
We also get these subtle hints about, the rumors, speculation among their peers about the exact nature of Alexander and Hephaestion's relationship. And Hephaestion may be struggling internally with his feelings, given the norms back then, adds a layer of personal complexity to their bond.
Hints at the intimacy of their connection and the potential challenges in a society with different views on male friendship, intimacy.
There's an interesting encounter with a distressed Thracian woman. Shows Alexander's improving Thracian learned from Lamberos, apparently.
Useful skill.
And Hephaestion's right there, supportive as always.
Hmm.
But then Cassandras arrives, reacts hostilely, hints at more tensions, the social hierarchy stuff.
Shows Alexander engaging with the diverse cultures around Macedon. Cassandras' reaction. Maybe jealousy, social rivalry.
After a reported brawl, Alexander's first concern is for the wounded. He personally thanks Paethon for his help.
Demonstrates that developing sense of responsibility for his guys. Crucial for inspiring loyalty in a military setting.
The news about Hermaeus, captured and tortured by the Persians.
Brutal.
And the contrast. Aristotle's stoic reaction versus Alexander's reported vow of vengeance.
Foreshadows the conflict with Persia, doesn't it? And highlights the importance of loyalty, different ways of handling adversity. Probably solidified Alexander's feelings about the Persian Empire.
Philip's still busy expanding Macedonian power, successful campaigns in Thrace, founding Philippopolis.
Making his mark.
His interaction with Alexander when he gets back sounds a bit better, but still complex. Alexander's asking sharp questions about military strategy, though.
Did you go in from the riverside or breach that blind bit next to the rocks? Stuff like that. Shows his keen interest, his growing understanding.
Yeah, even with the personal tensions, they shared that respect for military matters. Each recognized the other's strategic mind. We hear about a small but telling clash. Philip tells Alexander to clean up some wood scraps. Alexander performs this act of controlled defiance, makes a dramatic exit, leaves a dropped letter ignored.
A small moment, but it really shows the simmering power struggle. Alexander refusing to be treated like a subordinate anymore.
He's asserting himself, not just a kid taking orders.
Really?
A brief encounter in the women's quarters. Sees a captivating young woman, but his immediate question is about his mother. Shows where his focus is.
Priorities.
Then this description of Alexander alone in the old orchard at Aigai, gathering violets for Olympias. A rare glimpse of a more private, maybe sentimental side, connecting with childhood, nature.
Offers a more nuanced picture, doesn't it? Shows that capacity for tenderness, reflection amidst all the politics and ambition.
But that quiet moment is immediately followed by meeting his mother, who's described as raging like a banked-down fire.
Back to the turmoil.
Yeah, constant palace intrigues, emotional storms, which leads into the Dionysia festival at Aigai. Olympias is front and center as a maenad.
Deeply involved in the rituals.
And Alexander's watching her, observing this intense ritual behavior, further blurring those lines between the sacred and the personal when it comes to his mother.
Those vivid descriptions of her participation, they really underline the power of those religious experiences and the influence they likely had on Alexander's perception of her.
We hear about Alexander being disoriented after the festival, physically distressed.
Overwhelmed, perhaps.
And Hephaestion's right there, practical, comforting, emphasizes their bond again. Hephaestion tries to ground him, even invoking the myth of Achilles' invulnerability as a metaphor for resilience.
Hephaestion as the anchor, offering physical, emotional support after these intense events, the Achilles reference, hoping for Alexander's own strength against challenges.
A reported conversation between them reflects on death, true friendship, shows that shared philosophical depth, that intimacy.
Goes beyond just being companions.
And Alexander's interest in healing arts gets mentioned. Influenced by Aristotle, maybe Homer, he keeps a notebook of remedies, highlights that practical curiosity alongside the intellectual.
Shows a broader engagement with the world, not just military or political.
Philip briefs Alexander on the upcoming campaign against Perinthos and Byzantium. Alexander's strategic mind is sharp, grasping the plans quickly. They apparently share a thought about Athens, potentially siding with Persia now, highlights their complex, often strained relationship with the Greek cities.
Even with their personal fights, they had that shared strategic view of the geopolitical threats.
Then the big moment.
Yeah.
Philip announces Alexander won't be going on the campaign. He'll stay in Pella, and Philip gives him the royal seal of Macedon.
Wow. A huge sign of trust, delegation of real authority.
It's a massive moment of validation for Alexander, his father finally acknowledging his readiness for serious responsibility.
Had to be huge for him.
And Alexander apparently steps up immediately. Left as regent, he's efficiently gathering info from messengers, issuing orders, shows he was ready, a natural leader.
No hesitation, stepped right into the role. Understood governance, military strategy.
And then he successfully carries out Philip's plan against the Medoi, brings back prisoners, further cements his reputation as a capable commander himself.
Proving he could lead effectively in his father's absence.
Philip's reaction sounds relieved, even celebratory. He reportedly joked about Alexander consulting Aristotle on the constitution for his new city, suggests a moment of real paternal pride.
A thaw in the relationship, perhaps? Philip acknowledging his son's abilities?
And even with all this going on, Alexander and Hephaestion are still hitting the books, so to speak, discussing Thracian wildlife, planning to ask Aristotle more questions.
Shows how important learning and inquiry still were for them, even amidst practical duties.
Their encounter with a battlefield aftermath. Alexander recites Homeric verses, reflecting on the cost of war, the will of the gods, suggests a thoughtful, maybe burdened view of conflict.
He's not just participating. He's thinking about the deeper meaning, the human impact, viewing it through that epic lens he knows so well.
And the anecdote with the captured boy from Stegera? Alexander learns the name of the place, realizes his own school days are ending, signifies that shift towards adult responsibility is a different kind of learning.
Yeah, a symbolic moment of transition.
The assassination.
Yeah.
Philip at the theater in Aigai. The restless horse, the sudden, brutal attack by Pausanias.
The final act.
Alexander's reaction is immediate. Throws himself over his father's body, rallies the Macedonians. Shows that instinctive courage, decisive leadership, and absolute chaos.
In that moment of shock and danger, his immediate actions. Incredible bravery, natural assumption of command, testament to his leadership qualities.
His level-headedness, too. Assessing the situation, caring for his dying father, but also rapidly issuing orders to secure the area. Remarkable presence of mind.
A swift transition into the role of leader.
Philip's supposed last words, acknowledging the treachery. He took me from behind. A poignant, tragic end to their complex bond.
Even dying, he recognized the betrayal. And Alexander's response shows both grief and immediate acceptance of the responsibility now on his shoulders.
The immediate aftermath is a whirlwind. Alexander hailed by the Macedonians, swift actions against potential threats, that brief moment of false hope from the doctor before reality hits.
The Macedonians, reeling, quickly turned to Alexander, the natural successor in the crisis.
The narrative touches briefly on Philip's strategic brilliance, like the Byzantine siege, but also his ultimate vulnerability. The barking dogs, the moonrise, maybe suggesting even the best plans can fail.
Limits of planning, role of chance.
And Alexander's reported analysis of his father's strategy, critical but respectful, shows his own military mind evolving.
Learning from his father's successes and failures, analyzing strategy with an independent, discerning eye.
His interaction with his half-sister Cleopatra sounds poignant, shared grief, understanding their mother's complexities. And that quiet talk about the dogs and the sickle moon betraying Philip hints at those lingering suspicions about Olympias' involvement.
Yeah, the whispers continued.
His oath not to reveal Cleopatra's confidences just underscores those dangerous family dynamics he had to navigate, even right after his father's death.
The royal family bonds were incredibly complex, fraught with potential for alliance and betrayal.
We get a brief mention of Philip recovering slowly in Thrace before the assassination, still maneuvering politically, setting the stage for Alexander inheriting a kingdom ready for more expansion, but maybe facing new issues.
Right, inheriting opportunities and challenges.
And then a reflection on Alexander's own complex emotional state. Deep affection for Hephaestion, burning ambition, but also this profound melancholy he reportedly felt. Suggests an inner depth, maybe the weight of destiny.
Even with the outward strength, there was a rich inner life, capable of deep emotion, introspection, more complex than just the conquering hero image.
The aftermath of an earlier battle, maybe against the Illyrians, brings the human cost of war into focus. Ordinary people's resilience. And that contrast, Philip's weakened return to Pella versus Alexander's youthful energy. A powerful visual of the changing of the guard.
Underscores that transition of power, the cycle of leadership.
The growing tensions within Macedon are clear. The strained Philip-Olympias relationship, factions forming around Alexander, points to instability.
The ground was shifting.
And the Council of Delphi, asking Philip to lead the holy war against Amphissa, a task he couldn't fulfill before he died, inadvertently clears the path for Alexander to step onto the wider Greek stage.
The political landscape was in flux. Philip's death created a vacuum Alexander was perfectly positioned to fill.
The atmosphere in Athens is described as electric while waiting for Philip's next move. Demosthenes is on high alert.
Ready for anything.
His skillful speech later to the council playing on Theban interests, historical anti-Sparta feelings, but carefully not mentioning the Macedonian threat directly, shows the slippery nature of Greek politics.
Demosthenes was a master orator, political strategist, knew how to navigate those intercity rivalries for Athens' benefit.
Alexander's reported reaction to all this political maneuvering at Delphi sounds restrained, quietly telling Hephaestion they'll consult a seer later. Suggests a belief in omens, but also a strategic approach to seeking divine guidance.
He's not dismissing fate or prophecy. Seems more like he's weaving it into his overall strategic thinking.
Their shared enjoyment of the actor Thedalus' performance gets a mention. Shows Alexander's connection to the arts, his admiration for heroic portrayals, reinforces the influence of those narratives on him.
His appreciation for drama, especially heroic themes, feeds back into his own engagement with those ideals of glory and heroism.
Philip's planning for a potential war with Athens is described, maybe underestimating them based on past wins.
Possible overconfidence.
And his reported dismissive comment about the little king reveals he was aware of, maybe a bit jealous of, Alexander's growing fame.
Even as he planned campaigns, he clearly saw Alexander's rising star perhaps as a challenge.
The atmosphere at that dinner, Philip, Parmenion, Attalos,
Right.
with Pausanias standing guard, creates this palpable sense of dread, foreshadowing.
The tensions are thick. Pausanias' old grievances, Attalos' role, simmering right there.
And then the messenger arrives. News that Philip's strategic bait worked at Chaeronea sets the stage for that massive, decisive battle.
The final countdown begins.
Demosthenes is even said to have been on the battlefield, torn between civic duty and fear, a stark contrast to the advancing Macedonians. The descriptions convey the battle's intensity, the high stakes for Greece.
A pivotal conflict brewing while the personal dramas in Macedon reach boiling point.
The crucial news comes. The messenger reports Alexander breaking through the enemy lines at Chaeronea, securing that huge Macedonian victory.
Alexander proves himself decisively on a major stage.
Philip's confident assessment afterward, planning how to exploit the Athenian defeat, underscores his military genius right to the end.
Alexander's role in that win highlights his skill, his ability to execute strategy under fire.
We hear about Alexander's reaction to the fallen soldiers after the battle. Even personal combat with two Athenians, Hephaestion, jumping in, shows their shared bravery, loyalty.
In the thick of it together.
But then their quiet reflection on war's nature, trying to respectfully cover the dead, reveals that more somber, thoughtful side, understanding the human cost.
Even in victory, they're mindful of the toll, respectful of enemies, shows a deeper complexity.
Alexander's swift return to Athens post-battle, greeted by the tombs of Athens' great figures, a powerful reminder of history, expectations.
The weight of the past, the significance of the moment.
His reported brush-off of a Corinthian offering him a boy highlights his focus on bigger things, his disdain for that kind of transaction.
Mind on larger ambitions.
The brief mention of Dionysius the Younger interacting with Philip just illustrates the wide network of political exiles, Philip's diplomatic reach.
Shows the complex web Philip managed.
That quiet moment between Alexander and Hephaestion, after Philip's disastrous attempt to arrange Alexander's marriage. It's really poignant.
The Pixodorus affair.
Yeah. Their silent understanding, Hephaestion just saying, "You'll know your friends," speaks volumes about their bond, their trust.
A crucial source of support amidst the chaos.
And Alexander's bitter analogy, comparing Philip's relentless pursuit of a woman he can't have to his own situation, shows a sharp understanding of his father's flaws, his own tricky position.
A mature insight into his father's character and his own difficulties.
The wedding of Philip and Cleopatra, the big Macedonian customs, Alexander's barely hidden fury at Attalos' drunken insults about his legitimacy.
The breaking point.
It all leads to that final irreparable split. Philip's rage, Alexander's defiant exit, a painful end to their strained relationship.
That public confrontation, Alexander leaving, it's a permanent fracture, driven by jealousy, ambition, deep personal hurts.
Alexander's immediate move, heading off to Illyria with Hephaestion, to build his own power base, understand the local scene, shows that independent ambition, that strategic mind.
No longer staying in his father's shadow, actively seeking his own influence, securing his own position, clear ambition for independent power.
Their journey through the mountains, Olympias reportedly going partway, performing some symbolic separation from Macedon. Their arrival in Epirus sets a new stage for him.
New alliances, new maneuvers.
Reaching Dodona. Alexander's cryptic messages to Olympias, his pointed questions back to Philip, show that growing distrust, wanting clarity on his own status.
Testing the waters, demanding answers.
His reported consultation of the Dodona oracle, The lead strips, the wooden lots, and the cryptic answers about his wishes underscores how important divination still was.
Seeking not just political advantage, but maybe divine backing for his ambitions, a clearer sense of destiny.
Philip's private reaction to Alexander in Epirus, frustration, resentment, but also grudging admiration for his son's guts, reveals the complex feelings.
A mix of anger and maybe respect.
And Hephaestion's deep worry for Alexander shows the anxieties around his bold moves.
The stakes are getting higher. Awareness of the dangers is growing.
The symbolic reconciliation, supposedly arranged by Demarados, just papering over the cracks, right? Deeper divisions are forming in the court.
A temporary truce at best. Underlying tensions remain.
Philip's strategic betrothal of Artias to Pixodorus' daughter Incaria shows he's still playing the political game, expanding influence, even with family drama.
Politics never stops.
Hephaestion's worries increase about Alexander's seemingly reckless ambition. Alexander's defiant talk about his own future, his skepticism about Philip's intentions, reveals that deepening paranoia, that determination to secure his own path.
Alexander feels increasingly cornered, distrustful, fueling his ambition and risk-taking.
The incident with Thedalus, the actor being arrested, Alexander dramatically intervenes.
Defending the artist.
Yeah, asserting the sanctity of the artist, persuading Philip to show mercy, shows Alexander's compassion, his grasp of symbolic power, and his willingness to challenge his father publicly for a principle.
Demonstrating his own values, standing up for them, even against Philip.
Alexander's tense talk with Olympias about some past promise, her possible role in a plot, his stated wish to remain ignorant, highlights their strained relationship, mutual suspicion.
Walking a tightrope with her, too.
His sudden shift to asking about King Alexandros of Molossia suggests a strategic pivot, maybe eyeing a new alliance.
Always thinking ahead.
Then the massive moment. Olympias finally tells him the secret she kept, his divine parentage. The god initially didn't want it revealed.
Wow. Confirmation of all the whispers.
It profoundly changes Alexander's understanding of himself, his identity, his destiny.
A watershed moment. Reshapes everything for him.
His immediate reaction needing solitude, this feverish exaltation, and Hephaestion instantly there, supportive, guiding him to practical comfort, shows their bond again.
The Hephaestion, the constant support.
Philip's bitter reaction to the failed Carian marriage plot, blaming Olympias, just fuels the fire. Alexander calmly questions Philip's own marriage history, the new baby coming, exposing the hypocrisy, fracturing things further.
Ouch, pointing out the double standards.
Philip's internal thoughts reveal that mix. Resentment, grudging admiration, and this growing fear of being overshadowed by his ambitious son.
The family dynamics are at breaking point. Alexander embraces his new identity. Conflict with Philip intensifies.
We hear snippets of nobles talking, debating if Alexander's really plotting against Philip, acknowledging his army popularity, the risk of opposing him, shows the power shift happening.
The ground is definitely shifting in Macedon. Factions forming, succession uncertain.
Olympias sees Philip's planned Asia campaign as her chance, believes he won't leave her as regent, so she's determined to grab power, knows Alexander's presence with the army is key for them.
Olympias is positioning herself to seize control in Philip's absence. Very calculated.
Aristogoras' pitch to the Spartans is mentioned Persian wealth, weakness, foreshadows Alexander's eastern dreams. The Spartans' cautious reply, too far from the sea, gives historical context.
Sets the stage for future ambitions, shows Spartan conservatism.
Meanwhile, the assassination plot is actively forming. Conspirators choosing the Dionysia festival at Aigai. Diverse motives, Athenian politics, personal scores, and Pausanias' burning desire for revenge against Philip.
A complex web of motives converging.
Pausanias feels deeply betrayed by Philip. His resolve hardens.
Believes he has justification.
That seemingly innocent chat between Alexander and Hephaestion about a lost amulet. Hephaestion mentions the lucky day because Philip's daughter was just born. Chilling, dramatic irony.
Unaware of the impending doom.
Their polite greeting of Pausanias, not knowing his intent, heightens the tension.
The calm before the storm.
The procession at the festival grand, Macedonian chiefs present, anticipation. Pausanias leading the royal guard puts him fatally close.
Perfectly positioned.
Philip's confident words, "My people are guard enough." Tragic irony, just moments before Pausanias strikes.
Famous last words, almost.
The attack is swift, brutal. Philip tries to resist, fails. Immediate chaos. The theatrical setting, those 3 empty thrones for the gods. The sudden scream from the women's section.
A horrific, dramatic scene.
Alexander's reaction is instant, decisive, abandons his post, rushes towards the commotion. Instinctive leadership, courage under fire.
Straight into action.
In the chaos afterward, Alexander's thoughtful look at Antipatros, his strategic decision to trust Antipatros with securing Olympias, Antipatros obeying immediately, shows quick assessment of loyalties, threats.
Rapid strategic thinking even then.
Hephaestion's silent, powerful gesture of support for Alexander underlines their bond, that sense of shared destiny unfolding.
Standing together.
Finally, the grim procession. Philip's body on a gilded bier. Pausanias' corpse dragged on a hurdle, both to be shown to the people.
A stark display.
Alexander's order. Prepare a cross for Pausanias, a brutal end, asserting his own authority immediately.
No ambiguity about who's in charge now.
And that final image, the eagle and snake locked in combat in the sky above, a powerful symbol of the epic struggle beginning the uncertain future.
The transition is complete, marked by grief, violence, and this assertion of power. The symbolic imagery hints at the huge conflicts ahead.
So for this deep dive, we've really drawn on a fascinating mix of sources, haven't we?
We really have, a rich tapestry.
You've got the historical accounts, Plutarch, Demosthenes, Aeschines, Athenaeus, giving those invaluable contemporary or near-contemporary insights.
Yeah, the core historical bedrock.
We've also folded in inferences from those sources, like about Alexander's chat with the Persian envoys or the character of Leonidas.
Reading between the lines a bit, based on the evidence.
And then, importantly, fictionalized accounts, like Mary Renault's Fire from Heaven, which offers such a rich, detailed perspective on his inner life, those formative experiences. Lets us explore his personality, his relationships in a more, well, immersive way.
It's really through looking at both types of sources, historical and literary, weighing them carefully, that we can start piecing together a more complete, more nuanced picture of the complex forces that shaped young Alexander.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, what are the key themes that really jump out?
Well, definitely how he was shaped by those powerful, often clashing parents.
Right. Philip and Olympias.
His early, almost natural capacity for leadership, that keen intellectual curiosity mixed with burning ambition.
Those crucial early friendships. Hephaestion, Ptolemy.
Formative relationships, absolutely. And just the incredibly turbulent political world of Macedon he grew up in.
It feels clear that all these early experiences really laid the groundwork, the essential foundation for everything that came later. The conquests, the legend.
Absolutely. Those formative years were like a crucible, weren't they? Forging not just a king, but someone who would change the world map.
Which leaves us with a question for everyone listening to think about. When you consider all these early influences, the politics, the philosophy, the heroic ideals, the complex family stuff, how did they all ultimately converge to create the man who conquered a massive empire?
It's the ultimate question, isn't it? Nature versus nurture on an epic scale.
We'd encourage you to explore more. Maybe delve into Plutarch and Arrian, the main ancient historians, or even immerse yourselves in Renault's novel for that different feel. Think about the different ways people interpret his motivations, his legacy. It's an endlessly fascinating puzzle.
Indeed. Studying Alexander's early life offers really profound insights into leadership, ambition, and just the lasting impact of our formative years.
So until our next deep dive, keep exploring those captivating nuggets of knowledge that lie just beneath the surface.